Hello students, I have prepared this short video clip to just cover the areas that I think are a problem for you. Specifically, we're going to be looking at chapter 3, just two concepts. The chapter is very easy for you to understand. I must apologize for the PDF. In cutting the PDF up, some of the formatting got messed up, so there are big chunks of space. So usually what is considered 10 pages is actually 3 or 4 pages of continuous text, so please excuse that. So chapter 3 deals with context, perception, and competence. If you read through it, it's very simple. It's not difficult to understand, but the reason for this little instructional video is so that I can go over some of the topics that are difficult to understand for you and see if I can explain it a little better. First, I want to look at the concept of high versus low context. So I've experienced this on my travels in Asia, and it is a very unique situation. So basically, the textbook goes into great detail. I just want to summarize what it is. So high context basically means that the situation you find yourself in will dictate what is being said or is being discussed. Whereas a low context situation, the actual language itself is more important than the location. So for example, lovers could have a conversation in classroom, they could have a conversation at the beach, they could have a conversation at the coffee shop. But in high context cultures, that would only occur in situations where it is romantic. So if you find yourself with a boy, for example, at a location that is usually a romantic location, let's say a coffee shop, for example, it would be considered a kind of date, and the setting would be romantic, so he wouldn't need to necessarily tell you that it's a date, but the location would tell you that it's a date. So high context relies on the context in the actual situation that you find yourself in and the place you are, as opposed to the language being used. So you could be sitting in a romantic setting or in a romantic spot and be discussing your classwork. It wouldn't matter, because the context itself would tell you the nature of your interaction, not the language being used, as opposed to low culture. So if you scroll down in your chapter, you will see countries that are high context and low context. South Africa would fall under the low context, I think. But as time goes by, you'll find the boundaries blurring and so on. So while it is a little simplistic to regard some countries as high context and some countries as low context, it is helpful to distinguish in terms of generalization, not so much very specific to each and every situation you will find yourself in. Okay, and the next topic that I wanted to look at is faith. And this is very important, the concept of faith. To summarize briefly what this means is basically another person's is like to embarrass someone causes them to lose faith. It's commonly expressed in this way. So the chapter goes into greater detail. However, it is important to maintain a kind of mask, and any activity or behavior that results in the loss of the mask being worn by the person to whom the behavior is done to will result in that person losing faith. So here you can see there are a number of things that can be done to cause a person to lose faith, as it were. So if let's say we're in a classroom setting, and you give the wrong answer, and your instructor is overly rude to you, and makes derogatory remarks about you and tells you that you're not fit for university study and you should probably go work at McDonald's or something, then that would be a problem and it would cause you to lose faith, right? Because you're embarrassed. So that is basically the concept of faith. Okay. So what I want you to do is I want you to go through and to read the whole of chapter 3. You will find a lot of it self-explanatory. You look at high context, low context cultures, the importance of faith, culture and sensation. There's a bit of overlap with some of the other communication subjects in terms of perception and sense, but this goes into it and explains it from a cultural perspective. So please read through this carefully and slowly when you have time. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this chapter.